sands and the sun's warm embrace, whispers of tales that time cannot erase. A duggo sings where the rivers roam, stories of wonder will call you home. From the drumbeats loud to the stars so bright, her voice rises bold in the heart of the night. Every story an adventure untold, a journey crafted in courage and gold. Africa tales by a doggo she sings, where every story spreads its wings. A world of magic where dreams unfold.
But in the days to come, it became clear that things would never be the same. The road ahead would be filled with more pain, but also, perhaps, some hope. Would Peter and Anita's love survive the storm? And could Praise ever find it in her heart to forgive them both? Days turned into weeks, and still nothing had changed between Peter, Anita, and Praise. Praise continued to avoid her mother, and whenever Peter reached out, she would push him away. Anita, although deeply hurt by the distance between her and her daughter, remained patient. She hoped that with time, Praise would come around. But time was running out, as the baby's arrival was fast approaching. Peter and Anita had tried their best to stay focused on each other, but the constant tension around them made everything feel fragile. Peter's heart ached for Praise, but he couldn't deny the love he had for Anita. He wanted to be there for her, to support her through the upcoming challenges. Yet he felt the weight of his past, the pain of the woman he had once loved, now turning away from him. One evening, as Peter sat at home, the phone rang. It was Anita calling to say she needed to speak with him urgently. "Peter, it's Praise," Anita said, her voice trembling with emotion. She called me. She wants to meet with us." Peter's heart raced. Could it be? Was Praise finally ready to face the reality of the situation? He didn't know what to think, but one thing was certain: he was about to face the biggest challenge yet. The following afternoon, Peter and Anita arrived at the cafe where Praise had agreed to meet them. As they sat at a corner table, Peter couldn't help but notice how different Praise looked. She was no longer the young woman he had known. Her face was drawn with sadness, her eyes hard with resentment. But there was something else there too, something softer, as if she had begun to realize the weight of everything that had happened. Praise sat down in front of them, her arms crossed over her chest. But this time, she didn't look as angry. She looked tired. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice low. "A lot. And I think it's time I hear you out. Peter, and you too, Mom." Peter and Anita exchanged a look of relief, but also weariness. They didn't know what to expect from this meeting, but they knew it was a step in the right direction. "I know you both have your reasons," Praise continued, "but I just need you to understand how much this hurts. You were both people I trusted. You were supposed to be my support system. And now I feel like I have lost everything." Anita's eyes welled up with tears, but she kept them in check. "Praise, I never wanted to hurt you. I can't explain how this happened, but what I have with Peter, it's real. We didn't plan for this, and I know it's difficult to accept. But please know that I love you, and I never wanted to hurt you." Peter leaned forward, his voice quiet but sincere. "Praise, I am so sorry for the pain I caused. You were my future, and I never wanted to hurt you. But I also can't deny what I feel for your mom. I never expected this, but I am not running from it either." There was a long silence. Praise's eyes flickered between the two of them. Her heart turned. She had imagined this moment countless times, but now that it was here, She didn't know what to feel. She had spent so many nights wishing that things were different, that this would all go away. But it wasn't going away. She had to face it. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Praise spoke. "I am still hurt, Peter. I can't just forget everything that happened. But I know that I can't change the past either. You and Mom are in love, and there is nothing I can do about that. But that doesn't mean I have to accept it right away. I just need time." Peter nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I'll give you all the time you need, Praise. I am not going anywhere. But please, know that I'll always care about you. No matter what happens, you will always be important to me." Anita reached out to take Praise's hand. "I know this is hard, darling, and I'll never stop loving you. But Peter and we are trying to make this work, for the baby and for ourselves." Praise didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at their hands, her mind swelling with confusion. Could she ever accept this? Could she ever forgive them both for what had happened? As the days passed, Praise's heart began to soften, but the road ahead was still long. She didn't know if she could ever fully embrace the relationship between Peter and Anita. But one thing was certain: she couldn't carry the anger in her heart forever. She needed to heal. She started spending more time with her friends, trying to reclaim a piece of herself. Chika, in particular, was a great source of support. Chika had always been there for her, even when Peter and Praise were together. It was Chika who reminded her that she deserved happiness too, that she shouldn't hold on to bitterness. One afternoon, as Praise and Chika were walking down the street, Chika looked at her and said, "You know, I think you're doing the right thing by not rushing into forgiving them. But you can't keep holding on to the pain forever. At some point, you need to let go, even if it's just a little bit." Praise nodded, though she wasn't sure she could let go just yet. She still had so many unanswered questions, so many emotions that were tangled together. But maybe, just maybe, Chika was right. Maybe forgiveness would be the key to her own peace. Meanwhile, Peter and Anita were preparing for the arrival of their baby. The tension in their relationship had settled somewhat, but there was still an air of uncertainty hanging over them. Would Praise ever come around? Would they ever be a family in the way they had once hoped? But despite the uncertainty, Peter and Anita were determined to make it work. They knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but they were ready to face it together no matter the obstacle. The day Anita went into labor was the day that everything changed. Praise had come to visit them at the hospital, unsure of what to expect. As she stood in the waiting room, watching the doctors and nurses rush around, she couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions: fear, sadness, and hope. She didn't know how to feel about her mother's baby, but as she thought about it more, she realized something. This baby wasn't to blame for anything that had happened. It was a new life, a new beginning. And maybe that was all they needed, another chance to start over. As Praise sat in the hospital waiting room, her mind was racing. The situation was beyond complicated, and the emotions that swelled inside her seemed to change by the minute. She had never imagined being in this place, in this situation, where her mother's new life with her ex-boyfriend was something she couldn't avoid. But she was here now. She had come against all odds, and it was her mother's baby, her sibling. That would change everything. She stood up from her seat and walked towards the hallway, unable to sit still any longer. The sterile smell of the hospital filled her nostrils, but it wasn't the scent of the antiseptic that bothered her. It was the nagging sense of regret and confusion that gnawed at her chest. Why was this happening? She couldn't stop asking herself that question. She never expected to find herself sitting in this very hospital, hoping for a new life to be born, knowing the weight of what it would mean for everyone involved. She thought about the love Peter and Anita shared, how they had chosen each other despite everything else. but her own heart remained trapped in a prison of unresolved pain. It was as though she couldn't fully let go of the betrayal. The sound of a nurse approaching broke her from her thoughts. "Excuse me, are you Miss Praise?" she asked, looking at her clipboard. Praise nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "Yes, that's me." "The baby is here," the nurse said with a soft smile. "Your mom wants to see you. She's resting now, but you're welcome to go in." Praise's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this moment. Could she face her mother, knowing everything that had happened? Could she be strong enough to meet the new child, knowing it was the product of what had torn apart her relationship with both of them? Taking a deep breath, Praise followed the nurse down the long corridor. Each step felt heavier than the last, the tension in her chest making her feel like she was about to crack open. Finally, they reached a room at the end of the hall. Inside, Anita was lying in the hospital bed, a tired but joyful smile on her face. She was holding a small bundle in her arms, the baby. Peter was standing beside her, his expression a mix of pride and exhaustion. When he saw Praise, his eyes softened, but he didn't approach her. He understood the distance she still needed to keep, but his heart ached to see her standing there, torn apart by emotions. "Praise," Anita said softly, her voice hoarse but full of warmth. "Come meet your brother." Praise's eyes instantly flickered to the baby. It was wrapped in a soft white blanket, its tiny face peaceful and unaware of the chaos surrounding its arrival. For a moment, Praise felt a pang of something unfamiliar. Was it love, or simply the recognition of a new chapter in her life, one that she had never expected? "I don't know what to say," Praise whispered, her voice cracking. Anita looked up at her, her eyes filled with hope. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just come closer. This baby doesn't know anything about our past. He only knows love, and we want him to have that. We want to be a family again." Praise. Peter stepped forward, his hands outstretched. "Please, Praise. I know we've hurt you, and I know we have a long way to go, but I want you to be a part of this. We all need to heal together." Praise stood there for a moment, her heart wearing with itself. She didn't know how to react. She wasn't sure she was ready to forgive them, or if she ever would. But as she looked at the baby in Anita's arms, she couldn't ignore the soft pull in her chest. This was her family, even if it didn't look the way she had imagined. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to start thinking about how she could be part of that again. Slowly, Praise walked forward, her feet heavy with uncertainty. She glanced at Peter and Anita before finally focusing on the baby. Its tiny hand coiled into a fist, and for some reason, that small fragile gesture melted a piece of the wall she had built around her heart. She reached out and gently touched the baby's hand, feeling the warmth of its small fingers. "Hi, little one," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I am ready for this, but I promise to try. For you." Peter and Anita watched her closely, their expressions hopeful. They didn't expect instant forgiveness, or for everything to go back to the way it once was. But in that moment, there was a glimmer of something that resembled hope. In the following days, Praise continued to visit Anita and the baby. Though it wasn't easy, she spent a lot of time alone, trying to make sense of everything. The love she once felt for Peter was still there, buried deep beneath the hurt and the confusion. But she wasn't sure if she could ever go back to him, or to the idea of them being together again. But the baby had given her something she hadn't had in a long time. A reason to keep going, a reason to face the future. One afternoon, as she sat with her mother, holding the baby in her arms, Anita broke the silence. "I know this isn't easy, Praise. I wish I could change things, but I can't. All I can do is love you and support you. and I hope one day you will understand why things turned out the way they did. Praise looked at her mother, searching for the words she couldn't find. She wanted to scream, to tell Anita how much she had hurt her. But at the same time, she understood that her mother had her own journey, her own battles. And maybe, just maybe, there was room for forgiveness in this strange, painful man. I am not sure I will ever understand, Mom, Praise finally said, her voice trembling. But I am willing to try. For him, for the baby. Anita smiled softly, tears in her eyes. That's all I can ask for. Days turned into weeks, and while things weren't perfect, they slowly started to heal. Praise spent more time with her mother and the baby, and though it was hard to completely accept everything, she could see the love that Anita and Peter shared. It wasn't what she had envisioned for her own life, but it was real, and sometimes real was all that mattered. But the road ahead was still long. Would Peter and Praise ever find their way back to each other? Would Anita's relationship with Peter survive the bumps in the road? Only time would tell. And as the baby grew, so did their bond as a family. One that was imperfect but filled with hope for the future. It wasn't the story they had planned, but it was their story. And that was enough. The days following the baby's birth were both quiet and filled with anticipation. Praise continued to wrestle with her feelings. Every visit to Anita's home was a reminder of everything that had transpired, but it was also a reminder of the small yet growing family around her. Every time she looked into the baby's innocent eyes, she felt a small piece of her heart begin to heal, though she wasn't sure if she was ready to let go of all the anger just yet. She spent more time with Chika, talking about her struggles, seeking advice, and allowing herself to grieve before finding the courage to move forward. As time passed, Peter and Praise grew more distant in their interactions, but they remained civil for the baby's sake. There was a tension, of course, a quiet sadness that lingered when they were in the same room. Peter had accepted that Praise needed time and space, but deep down, he held on to the hope that someday she would come to understand, and maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild the bridge that had broken between them. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult conversation with Chika, Praise found herself standing at Anita's door. She had not planned on visiting that day, but something inside her told her it was time. It was time to speak to her mother honestly, to voice the thoughts that had been locked inside her heart for so long. Anita opened the door with a tired but warm smile, holding the baby in her arms. "Praise," she greeted softly. "I wasn't expecting you today." Praise hesitated, her heart racing. She had come for a reason, but she wasn't sure how to begin. She took a deep breath and looked at her mother in the eye. "Mom," she started, her voice trembling, "I need to talk to you about everything." Anita nodded and invited her in. They sat down, the silence between them filled the unspoken word. Anita gently rocked the baby in her arms, waiting for her daughter to continue. "I am still angry, Mom," Praise admitted, her voice breaking. "I am still hurt, and I don't know if I can ever forget everything that has happened. It's so hard for me to understand why you did it. Why Peter? Why now? And why couldn't you just let me be happy? I don't have answers to all your questions. But I do know this. I never meant to hurt you, darling. I only wanted to find my own happiness. I am so sorry that my choices have caused you so much pain." Praise wiped a tear from her cheek. "I don't know if I can forgive you, or Peter, for what happened, but I think I am starting to realize something." Anita's eyes filled with anticipation. "What is it, sweetie?" "I think I've been holding on to the pain for too long," Praise said quietly. "I have been blaming everyone else for how I feel, but I need to accept that I also have a role in this. I have to stop letting the past control me, or I will never be able to move forward. I don't know what the future holds, but I think I am ready to try." "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for giving me this. I know I hurt you, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. But hearing you say that, it gives me hope. Praise held her mother tight, feeling the weight of everything she had carried for so long lift just a little. She didn't know if she would ever be able to fully forgive, but she realized that forgiveness was a process, a journey, not a destination. A few weeks later, Peter stood in front of Anita's door, his heart heavy with uncertainty. He had been in touch with Praise, and though things were still strange, they had agreed to meet once more. He wasn't sure about what would come of it, but he was determined to show her that he wasn't giving up on their connection, no matter how impossible it seemed. When Praise opened the door, her eyes were softer than they had been in a long time. "Peter," she said softly, her voice steady. "I've been thinking about everything." Peter's heart skipped a beat. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking that I am not ready to forgive everything," she said, "but I am ready to forgive myself for holding on to the past for so long, for not allowing myself to let go of the anger. I don't know if we will ever be what we were, but I can't keep carrying this way." Peter nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I am here for you, Praise. Always have been and always will be." They stood there in the doorway, two people who had once been so intertwined in each other's lives, now standing on separate paths. But for the first time in a long time, both felt a small sense of peace. As the weeks went by, Praise found herself in a place of quiet acceptance. She spent more time with her mother, the baby, and even Peter. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. She had learned the value of forgiveness, not just towards others, but towards herself. Sometimes, life didn't go according to plan. People made mistakes, and while healing took time, it was always possible. The baby grew, bringing a new sense of joy into the family. Peter, Anita, and Praise all adjusted to their new roles. Peter as a father figure to the baby, Anita as a mother trying to mend broken bridges, and Praise as a daughter learning to love again. Praise came to realize that sometimes family wasn't just about blood or perfect stories. It was about the people you choose to stand beside, the people who would still love you when everything felt broken. And as time went on, she learned that the most important thing wasn't getting everything right, but finding the courage to keep going, even when it felt impossible. Moral lesson 1. Forgiveness is a journey. Healing doesn't happen overnight. Forgiveness, whether it's for others or for ourselves, is something that takes time and effort. It's not about forgetting the past, but learning how to move forward with peace. 2. Family is not perfect. Family is not about having everything figured out. It's about love, understanding, and support through the toughest times. Sometimes, it's the imperfections that make families strong. 3. Letting go is liberating. Holding on to anger and past hurts only weighs you down. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is let go, not for the other person, but for your own peace of mind. 4. Growth comes through adversity. The greatest growth often happens when we are faced with challenges. Through the pain, there are lessons to be learned, and sometimes we emerge stronger and more compassionate than before. And lastly, choose love over pride. Love in its truest form requires humility. Sometimes we must set aside our pride and accept that relationships require effort, compromise, and above all, love. We have come to the end of the story. If you love this video, please kindly share with your loved ones, leave us a comment on your opinion, and subscribe for another interesting video like this. Until I see you all on the next one. Bye for now.
Through the sands and the sun's sun's warm embrace, whispers of tales that time cannot erase. A duggo sings where the rivers roam, stories of wonder will call you home. From the drum beats loud to the stars so bright, her voice rises bold in the heart